Welcome to the Metropolitan Campus of Fairleigh Dickinson University. One of 4 campuses at the university, our largest campus. For those of you who know the university, and I see a number of familiar faces, so I know, but I will say for the benefit of others that Fairleigh Dickinson is a university that not only values, but celebrates diversity of all kinds. And the event this evening and the event last evening is an example of that. Most of you probably also know that this month, the month of November, is Indigenous American Heritage Month. And it's appropriate that we honor, in this case, Indigenous Americans. And we have a number of distinguished Indigenous American chiefs with us this evening to provide what I'm certain will be a very enlightening event. The format will be a symposium. We'll have a series of guest panelists in addition to a moderator. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Director of Programs with Intergovernmental and Non-Governmental Organizations here at the university, Dr. Joanne Murphy, who will introduce our moderator and our guests. Thank you.
The wrong one. Now I've got the right button. You see, I'm a real techie. It's such a pleasure to have you all here. Because we're starting late, I'm going to abbreviate my comments. We have one of our guest chiefs who is on his way, who maybe just walked in the door. Welcome, Chief Anthony. We're very glad to have you. So I'm going to make my comments even shorter now that he's here. We have started here at Fairleigh Dickinson University what is going to be an annual recognition of Native American Heritage Month. We feel that this is an important way to show our commitment to educating our youth to become true global citizens, and that means embracing all populations, and particularly the populations in our own country. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Chief Holloway and our guest chiefs to go to the stage immediately, and we will get started.
My brothers, would you come up and have a seat at the head table here? Osio. That was a nice answer. Thank you very much. My name is Ronald Yonaguska Holloway, and I am the principal chief of the New Jersey Sandhill Band of Indians. And as you can see here, these are other Indians who've agreed to join us this evening. I make fun, but I want you to appreciate that Chief Ross is a blood chief like I am, which means it's hereditary. Traditionally, blood chiefs are not seen in public, ever, period. You send a red chief, you send a council member, but chiefs are not normally seen in public. Chief Van Dunk was chief of the Ramapo during one of the most turbulent times. Such is the commitment that you have from these chiefs to talking to you this evening, that they did not send anybody, but they came themselves to make sure that they conveyed correct information. And on behalf of Fairleigh Dickinson University, myself, my people, and our distinguished guests, I'd like to thank you for coming this evening. We're going to have a very interesting program, the theme of which, as you know, has to deal with the status of Native Americans today. Each one of our guests is going to have their own unique perspective on what is going on in Native America, what's going on with their people, what the status is in this country, and of course, some thoughts for the future. Our first speaker this evening will be Chief Darius Ross of the Anasaulagi Northeastern Band. He is a Kituwa Cherokee, which is probably the most spiritual portion of the Cherokee Nation. that there is. His family is honored in their sacred roles of being very, very important religious men. Not only are they Katua, but Chief Ross descends from one of the most fascinating families in Cherokee history, being a direct blood descendant of John Ross, who perhaps you've heard of, who took up residence on what is called Ross's Corner in Newton, almost adjacent to where they have the large county complex up there. He was chased out of the South with some very important articles that they would have liked to have gotten. That's probably bad grammar if there's an English teacher out there, I'm really sorry. But he was able to spirit these items away, which they now reside with the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. So he's going to have his own unique perspective. I will speak from a Lenape perspective, and Chief Van Dunk will cover both, as his genealogy covers both lines. So without any further conversation from me, we'll give our attention to Chief Ross, and he will inform you what his theme is.
Usta Sunanoi, Migada. Good evening to all. I am Darius J. Two Bears Ross, Taliona Kwosa. I am a principal chief of Ane Jalagi on the Salaji. Can everybody hear me? Okay. I wish to extend a thank you, Iwado Anishi, to FTU and Chief Yanagushka of the Sandhill Band for inviting me this day to speak. After too much, or not too much thought, it was my conclusion that there are so many issues regarding our Red Clay nations and their citizens with our 300-odd years of survival and cultural sound people, beginning with colonization, forced assimilation, and the systematic disenfranchisement and segregation of all indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. And it's a topic and issues that I would love to sit down and discuss openly and truthfully about in an open forum from a cultural, indigenous, Native perspective. Instead, as I see we have a young bloods out there, I decided to talk about our society's tribal ethics, which is not commonly or readily talked about. And these ethics are handed down from our ancestors to elders, done orally by stories or directly. I've chosen this subject because I feel there's something to learn for all of us. These ethics may vary from tribal nation, from one to another. That is the root of their social society culturally. These ethics and guidelines on how we walk or we should walk well daily in our lives with one another as human beings and being helpers and keepers and good stewards of the earth, our mother, and all our relations. I will read a list of 15 points of ethics, and it's known amongst the traditional Kithowaji or Kintoa societies throughout the Cherokee and Lenape nations. This list is as follows. One, we rise with the sun and pray. Pray alone, pray often. For the Great Spirit, you speak alone. Two, be tolerant of those who are lost in their path. Ignorance, conceit, also jealousy, and greed stem from a lost soul. Pray they will find guidance. Three, search for yourself by yourself. Do not allow others to make your peace. It is your road and your road alone. Others may walk it with you, but no one can walk it for you. 4, treat the guest in your home with much consideration. Serve them food, give them the best bed, and treat them with respect and honor. 5, do not take what is yours, whether from a person, a community, a wilderness, or from a culture that was not earned nor given. It is not yours. 6, respect all things that are placed upon this earth, whether it's people or not. 7, honor other people's thoughts, wishes, and words. Never interrupt. Mock or rudely mimic them. Allow each person the right to personal expression. 8, never speak of others in a bad way. The negative energy that you put in the universe will multiply when it returns to you. 9, all persons make mistakes. All mistakes can be forgiven. 10, bad thoughts cause illness of mind, body, and spirit. Practice optimism. 11, nature is not for us, it is a part of us. 12, children are the seeds of our future. Plant love in their hearts and activate wisdom and life's lessons. When they are grown, give them space. 13, avoid hurting others in the hearts of others. The poison of your pain will return. 14, be truthful at all times. Honesty is the test of one's will within the universe. And last, keep yourself balanced. Your mental self, your spiritual self, emotional self, physical self, all need to be strong, pure, and healthy, and work out all bondage. These are the ethics and tenets that you will find in the majority of tribal society and the basis of their tribal law. These are the things that we try to approach all people with in a dignified and sacred manner. We believe all things are sacred, all human beings are sacred, all human beings should walk sacred. It is hard in today's world to try to keep those tenets, especially in a world that is so competitive and demands competition on so many levels, personally, in the work world, sometimes even in your own home. That's just the way the society is built nowadays. It affects your walk. It affects our walk. We have a term that you step out of spiritual and you get into the flesh with arguments. You know, you don't think, you just get caught up. That has a lot of parallels in dealing with tribes today. You know, on the economic front, we try to be contemporary. It goes against the grain, the way we're raised as children growing up. You know, once you get out into the world, you find it's different than it was when you were growing up, you know, back on a res or inside your family and your cluster, your neighborhood, so to speak. So it's kind of hard to work, you know, and function in two worlds at one time, or have two nations underneath one sun, so to speak. I thought about standing up here and speaking for a whole 20 minutes and contemplating and say, gee, all these different issues that we have, you know, that apply to us, all these different problems that we have in our societies. So many to list. our earth, our mother, constantly being, antagonized and being dug up. The poisons, everything which is affecting all of us, not just us. There's many things that are going on. Where do I start? What do I say? So I figured I'd just share a little bit of our culture, the basis of it anyway, as a Kintua. Kintawajis, as Brother Yanakushpa said, we try to keep that spiritual walk. Kintawajis, all of us are Cherokee or Lenape, but not all Cherokee and Lenapes are Kintawaji or Kintuas. There's only 4 sects. 2 of them are in Oklahoma, one's here in Jersey and New York, and the other's in North Carolina, Kuala. Some of us are more traditional than others. Some of us are not so traditional at all. One's in Oklahoma, there's more of a political fraction, and half of them are traditional, half of them are not. So to keep the culture alive is a hard thing to do nowadays. Keeping the language alive is hard to do. Throughout the assimilation process, if you take anybody, any culture, you take away their language, all right, you pretty much strip their culture. There are things that are in the language that designate who you are and how you think and how you perceive, everything around you, the universe. So once you take that away, what do you have left? I have to grab somebody else's. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard. Some of us try to make a comeback. Some of us, I know Cherokee families that are learning language all over again because they wasn't raised in the language. Doesn't make them less Cherokee or Lenape. It's just the another language. Their parents were totally, completely assimilated over the generations. So the young bloods are now picking up the language, the culture, the ways, all over again. It's up to our elders and us to hand that down. Hopefully, we're able to reinstill that in New Jersey. Well, if I have anything to do with it, we'll try to reinstill the language on a stronger level and open up our community so that others can learn what we truly are about as a people. And that goes for the arts, that goes for our stories, that goes for our thinking process, basically. Because a lot of people don't know. They have a perceived notion that they see on TV or a perceived notion that they hear by word of mouth. But I guess that's our fault too for being so reclusive. When we were raised, we were hiding. So we were taught to keep to ourselves and don't talk to nobody. Let them assume whatever they wanted to assume. And don't talk your language outside the house. Don't let them know who you really are. I can remember growing up like that. My grandmother instilled that us at an early age. Don't let them know. I didn't know we were hiding until I was 16. I was like, But, and I'm not the only one with that story. I mean, there's a lot out there from here to New York, North Carolina. Kuala, they were hiding up in the mountains for a long time. They thought they got all of us rounded up and took us to Oklahoma. That wasn't the case. New Jersey has a strong history of Cherokees being here for 300 years or more, because we separated before they moved us out. We all migrated from Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, all kind of places, and we wound up here. People didn't know we were here. We settled in Roselle, Union County, all over the place, down the shore, everywhere. You know, and we let people assume whatever they wanted to assume who we were. So needless to say, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's not enough time in the world in 20 minutes to say what I really need to say and cover all the issues that plague us or plague everybody, you know. Just not enough time, unfortunately. Maybe we can arrange another day. We can come back here and sit down and just have, you know, hours and hammer things out. I guess that summarizes what I had to say today, for the most part. I hope I gave you things to think about in regards to our ethics, and just take them home with you and think about them. Some of them are pretty hard to do. It's hard to be not jealous of things when you're taught to be jealous of things. You know, Dad, I like that guy's Hummer. I do it all the time. I haven't got it yet, but I'm going to get one. You know, and it's ingrained in you. It's part of our society. So when I say these things to you, these are things we strive for, to walk well, as we say. We pray well, we walk well, to be in harmony and balance with everything around us, because that is the proper way. This is what the Creator handed down to us to be helpers and keepers for all our relations. When we say all our relations, that we mean everything in creation. For the four-legged, two-legged trees, the rocks. You know, the old days, if you kicked a rock, you said, "Excuse me." That's how intense we were aware. You know, when you took something, you asked for it, you prayed for it, and you asked forgiveness for it, whether it be a deer or whatever. You know, how many people do that today? You know, you got people step on your feet, and you don't say, "Excuse me." You know, that's pretty rude. You know, by our standards. You know, so just think about what I gave you, and hopefully that'll give you some thought, and maybe you can rethink about how you approach things and everyone from here on out. And that's basically all I have to say for now. I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much, Chief Ross. And as you can see, you can understand why I count him as one of my dearest friends. And actually, as a newer chief, he operates most of the time as my spiritual conscience. And sometimes the things he tells me, it's sometimes a bitter pill to swallow, but I have to remember tradition. All right, I saw that from here. But how does that fit into our theme? Well, for Indigenous people, for Native Americans, the pressure to assimilate, and it is an assimilation, it's a forced assimilation, into the dominant society is tremendous. Everything is flash and panache and the latest gadget. So you can see, I want to apologize for kicking the rock, or I want the new Xbox game. There's a difference. Knocking somebody over in Manhattan trying to get to the subway, or helping an old lady across the street. There's a difference in core values. And when those core values are lost amongst an indigenous group of people, generally what follows behind that is you lose the loss of language, which is the thought, the richness that binds the tribe together. That destroys the tribe. Originally, our societies were based on the law of one. We believed in sustainability, respect, giving back, all values which unfortunately are lacking in today's society. When's the last time somebody thought about give back or sustainability? It's a new catchword, sustainability. But when Columbus made that accidental left turn and ran into a continent, it was already being practiced here. That's why there was plenty of food. Everybody was able to share. Wasn't a problem. Yeah, we got room for you. Come on, we'll show you how to fish. We'll show you how to plant. The concept of owning land didn't exist. So you could see how somebody would view that as a weakness, but that was actually the core strength of Indigenous society on this continent. Now, our next speaker, I first met him, he was a chief long before I was. I think I had just got appointed to the council when I first met Chief Van Dunk, when I went up to the Longhouse, and he had already been dealing with the, and I'll use the word alleged because sometimes Ford has big attorneys, the alleged dumping of toxic waste on his land. He'd already dealt with the shooting of natives by local law enforcement on his land, and he was very young and very seasoned, and I respected him immeasurably, and that's why I asked him to come speak this evening. Chief Van Dunk, I was proud to sit in council with him. I look forward to sitting in council with him again in the future, and I'd like us all to give him a warm welcome. He does have a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
You have one?
Yeah. We have a presentation.
Okay, we have a presentation. Possibly we might have visuals. He did get here a little bit late, so we'll cut him a little slack. And if he does birds or something up there on the wall, that'll be fine too. But we'll give our attention to Chief Van Dunk and listen intently for words of wisdom that he'll share with us also.
As you told, my name is Anthony Van Dunk. As you'll see, I'm born a Ramapo Lenape Indian. How's that? Better? Anishik Tish Alamo Quain, Elamili Yang Yokai Kishkreek, Milwaukee Lualamo Wesawakan, Wak Nialango Moati, Wak Niwakian. For those of you who don't know Munsee, I wrote it in English on the side. Luhumawen Wemo Awin Ta Wa Tek Hulawe, Nipatamowa Wilek Awe, Pishki Mbowan Sowankinan. Lapianishik El Milian Yokai Kishkwi Wak Nimwakin Walama Wasawakin Nebum Wasakanam. Anishik 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 Anishik. Anishik means thank you. Okay? And we say 12 times because the creator is on the 12th level. So, as we go, now we get to talk about Indigenous love. We're not talking about this kind of Indigenous love. What we're talking about, well, in order to talk about Indigenous love, we're going to first start off and talk about colonial love, which is what I believe is the opposite of Indigenous love. Colonial love, divide and rule is what the Latin words up there are. Distrust is stronger than trust, envy stronger than adulation, respect, and admiration. So that's what Chief Ross was talking about, coveting their neighbor's wife, and stuff. Okay? But this is how colonials would control the masses, by using these type of techniques. The creating or encouraging divisions among the subjects in order to prevent alliances. So if I hate you and I hate you, you're not going to be on my side and you're not going to be on my side, so we're never going to get together to be able to hate him. You have adding or promoting those who are willing to cooperate in leadership, which means that I hire you. You're going to do exactly what I say if you want to keep your job. And when I say this, political or in corporate also. So in order for you to keep your job, no matter whether it's right or wrong, you probably will not do what's right because you want to keep your job. Then foster distrust and animosity between local rulers. So if I have you not trusting him, and him not trusting her, and her not trusting him, you're not even going to worry about what I'm about to do to you. So that's part of colonial love. And how do we see this in everyday life? Well, for Native Americans, you always hear someone say, what's your blood quantum? And when you say, if anyone out there has ever met anybody and they said, well, I'm Indian, you immediately ask, well, how much? Well, it seems to only work when the government has something they have to give. Because Native African Americans, they say 1 drop, you are, However, with natives, it's a different story because there's money that has to come out of their pocket to go somewhere else. There's something they want. There's something they took. Land, culture, They destroyed them. Their idea of love was to make you feel less than human. You were just something that was there. You were cattle. You were just a being. You were readily, we could kill you, no problem. You're not real. That's what colonial love is about. And again, the blood quantum is something that not only did the federal government portray it because they wanted to get rid of Native Americans embraced it. I'm full-blooded, blah, blah, blah. I'm quarter this or that. It doesn't really matter, because even if you have a drop, even if your heart is Native, you are. And since we've been in this country for over 400 years, I'm pretty sure everybody slept with everybody else. Not personally. But let's say my relations really liked a good time. Then there's treaty love. Treaty love is, hey, come here, I got this great idea. You give me your land, and I might give you money. Don't worry, I'll take care of you. What I believe in taking care of you means, well, for example, for those of you who were yesterday, Pine Ridge, taking care of you meant that you were basically you weren't educated, you didn't have health care, you were basically drinking all the time, your housing was substandard, but we took care of you because you gave us really nice land. That's part of treaty love. And this is what I was talking about earlier. The present chief of the Ramapo Lenape Indian Nations accepted the findings and recommendations of the Ramapo Lenape Indian Council. Anthony Van Dunk has been banned from the Ramapo Lenape Indian Nation for life, beginning March 17th, 2010. That's colonial love. The funny part is, he really thinks that matters, because it doesn't. Only organizations can kick you out. Nations can't really kick you out. They can talk to you badly, but this also comes under the aiding and promoting those who are willing to cooperate with the sovereign. So we had the council who gave me a trial, so to speak. I wasn't allowed an elder, I wasn't allowed a lawyer. I videotaped it. We'll put it on YouTube later. But it just goes, in that trial, they didn't prove anything. Nothing so egregious as you're willing to take away, theory, my nativeness. Now I say theory because since they've done this, plus they also brought me to court, that they're not a nation. They're basically a club, which just like the Elks, they can let me play or not play if they choose, but I don't really care to play with them. But again, this is all part of 400 years of learning of colonial love. Now, with the Cherokees down, they have what were called freedmen. Now, the freedmen were with them forever. Ever. Brothers, sisters, cousins, special friends, and they kicked them out of the nation. They said, "You're not Cherokee." Yep, that's right. Another organization practicing colonial love. Again, they're trying to pit one against another. The freedmen against a Cherokee. Now, when all else fails, what are they going to go to? Well, they'll turn their back. For example, during the Revolutionary War, there was a group called the Paxton Boys. The Paxton Boys were a group of vigilantes who would go around Pennsylvania killing natives. Just straight out, walking down the street, hello, boom, dead. Now, the government said, hey, we can protect you. Come on down to our cities. We'll protect you inside our cities. So that's what they did. The Paxton Boys went in and killed 20 of them right in the center of the town. Because part of colonial love is not to pay attention or let them get away with what they want. Pavonia Massacre in New Jersey, same thing. Natives come to be protected by the people who said they can protect them. One night, there was a raid, and 129 soldiers killed 100 natives. Kids, elders, women, men, did not matter. They just made it up. But again, this is where, again, the practice of the colonial love. It goes on. You have Gnuten massacre in Ohio. Now, these are natives who accepted God, the Moravian God, as their protector. And they were pacifists. They no longer practiced native culture, prayer, dance, nothing. However, men came in and slaughtered them. Men, women, children. They walked them into the buildings that were in Gnuten. They hit them with tomahawks. They hit them with sledgehammers, or the equivalent of, and then they burned the buildings that they were in after they locked them in. Now, Pine Ridge, South Dakota. During the 70s, when AIM was trying to make Pine Ridge a place to live, a traditional place to live, you had the other side who wanted it to be non-traditional. And they just killed them, just because. You had Wounded Knee going on at the same time, but you had AIM supporters dying, being murdered actually. You had relations being murdered, AIM people being murdered, most of this with no investigation or little bit of punishment. Now, but another lesson of colonial love was Andrew Jackson's Indian policy, was to get rid of them, to move them out. Of course, he was just thinking the other side of the Mississippi. But that was his job. That's what he said. You know, let's just get rid of them. They're not really important. And we have the right of discovery. We found you, so your land is mine. Yes, if I find your purse and if I keep it, I go to jail. I've got to become a country. Now, that's colonial love. Colonial love has taught us, I'm going to take everything from you and you're going to like it. I'm going to take your home, your culture, your religion, your family, everything you have, I'm going to take it away and you're going to go yippee-ki-yay. Hey, that's what's happening. That's what has happened. That's what continues to happen, because if that didn't continue to happen, what happened to me in my nation, or what has happened to the freedmen, or what has happened to hundreds of other people in other nations all across the country would have never happened. So what are we going to do about this? Okay? This is what we're going to do about it. There are 7 grandfather teachings. They're respect, bravery, honesty, humility, wisdom, truth, which we can talk about, but what we're going to talk about, what we're going to use for change, is love. Now, love is to know peace. Love is the inner love. Love is the idea that you're here to uplift the person next to you. The person next to you is there to uplift the next person, and so on and so on. It's a trade. It's a giving and a taking. That's what Indigenous love is about. It's not about always giving, because that's impossible, because you have to be fed also. And it's not about always taking, because if you meet somebody who always takes, what do? You get rid of them, because they're not practicing Indigenous love, they're practicing colonial love, which, if you don't know by now, I'm not a big fan of. Okay? Now, what has helped many natives, and actually anybody in the world for that matter, is the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. Now, until the 70s, natives weren't allowed to pray in public, speak their language in public, dance in public, anything related to their culture was forbidden. However, in 1978, they changed that law. And that is the beginnings of colonial love. Indigenous love. Daniel Day-Lewis, remember that. Okay, indigenous love. And we have to learn and believe. I mean, Henry Ford, who may have been a bonehead in other things, got this one right. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is a process. Working together is a success. So that's what we're going for. All natives, all people should be working together for success. Success meaning love for everyone. And we're not talking the sweaty kind of love. We're talking about the kumbaya type of love. It's where together we're going to walk up a flight of stairs, and when we get to the top, we're going to reach happiness. That's what success is. Success isn't money, although I do like it. Success isn't the big house, although I do like it. But that's not the important part. The important part is that I get to take care of you. You get to take care of him. He gets to take care of her. You know, food, stuff like that. And then if we keep this going, indigenous love will definitely take over all the lessons that we've learned for the past 400 years. Now, I will tell you, colonial love is a human trait. It's not only in New Jersey. It's not only in the United States. We can all tell stories from whatever country our family is from, and they have similar stories. But indigenous love, no matter whatever country you're from, will be able to conquer that. Now, this is where you come involved. So we're talking about indigenous love, and this is what you have to do, or you should do. First and foremost, take care of yourself. If you can't love yourself, you can't love anybody. Take care of yourself. Feed yourself. Don't be a martyr, because no one's going to be a martyr for you. Well, at least not now, eventually. Okay? After you take care of yourself, then you take care of your family, because they need your help. They're the second step. No one else, not your friends, but your family's the second step. And after you take care of your family, then you take care of your community. And when your community's healthy, then you take care of your nation. It is only when you do those 4 steps, starting with loving yourself, taking care of yourself, being the best person that you can be, being that person you want to be, not what people are telling you to be. Because we're talking about indigenous love, and that is part of self-love. Now, during the years, we've lost a lot of ceremony. So many ceremonies you really couldn't count. But again, back in the 70s, a new one, well, not a new one, but one came out. It was fleshed out, it was found out, and people started to like it and embrace it, okay? And this is one that I would like everyone here to take part in now. Now, it's not very complicated, it's not in any special language, and I think everyone can do it. So what I would like to do is I will do the ceremony to Laura Zucker, the wonderful Laura Zucker, and then I want everyone else to follow in and do the same ceremony to everybody else, okay? It's very simple because back up to the 70s, we were walking around and we were feeling very lonely. We felt that we weren't part of anything because they were pushing us out, they were pushing us around. However, one morning, one sunrise, they came up. And they just did this. And that's the ceremony. So I would like everyone to get up. And perform a ceremony on your friend.
Where's the love? Look at all that love.
Feel it. There'll be a lot of kids at night. I love you.
Where's all that love? I ain't coming down in there.
We're all right there on the edge most of the time. He is very, very special. Very, very dear to this state. And as you can see, on a more academic note, history is not always pretty. Now, I had a fabulous professor. I'm not going to give you my age, but it was almost 3 decades ago. And the first thing he did when we sat in the big lecture hall like this is he took the history book and he dropped it in the trash can. And he had us read the memoirs of Douglas. He had us read Hiroshima and books that we were sworn not to tell the deans about because he taught real history. And in order to understand history, you have to be able to look at the ugly side of it so that you can understand where you're coming from and affect change. Slavery is an ugly part of history. You have to know about it to appreciate where people have come from. Now, I did an interview, I think it was a couple years ago, for the Jewish Standard. And in that interview, we talked about the comparisons between Native American history and the Holocaust. And when Columbus ran into this continent, there were, depending on who you talk to, between 28 million and 56 million natives on this continent. Not exactly lost. We knew where we were. Okay. Now, going on 2012, there are almost 7 million of us. Now, that's a loss of 52 million from today's numbers. Where were we that it took us this long to get up to 7 million? Something happened. History should not be forgotten. No revisionist history. The only way through the future is to understand the past, to look at the errors of the past, and to move forward. Our history, tribally, is passed on through the oral tradition, which is another thing that the dominant society loves to say. Show us the paperwork. We didn't need paper. You shook hands on it, it was done. You did ceremony and you hug, it was done. Our culture was based on sustainability. Everything was about giving back, not taking more than you needed. Your word was your bond. And that was it. True, there were conflicts on occasion, but those conflicts came when somebody broke what was considered to be the law of one. So I say this because in order for you to learn and go forward, some things might be shocking, but they're true. Take them for what they are, look at them. You take the good with the bad, you analyze it, you decide what is appropriate, and you move on. Thank you, and it's always a pleasure to see you, my brother. Now, you're stuck with me. I wanted to, I guess in my part, my eyes aren't as good as they are, so used to be, so if you bear with me, I'm going to put my cards up here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the future, because that's really what we're here about. We look at the past, we understand the problems of the present, but where are we going? Where is society taking us? Where are indigenous people going? Well, when you look around, you see the world is segmented. You just go over to the city, you can see that. You have Little Italy, Chinatown, Germantown, Koreantown. You take a look at, I spent most of my life on the West Coast, so when I came back here to be on council, I'd never seen anything like exists on the East Coast. Whole neighborhoods of just Caucasian people, whole neighborhoods of African Americans, whole neighborhoods of Italians, and you don't go into somebody else's neighborhood. It's inconceivable. It's like somebody transplanted Texas to the Northeast. It's a phenomenal thing because Native Americans don't have a concept traditionally of race. As Deborah White Plume was talking about yesterday, we describe things based upon a characteristic. Maybe the eyes are a little pulled back, or the language is harsh, or the skin pigment is dark. But we don't have a concept of Asian, black, white, Italian. Those things don't exist in Native America. They are a product of a colonization that's European driven. And race was invented so that they could categorize people and show that they are not part of English society. That's it. I use the English, I like to pick on them on occasion, but that's what they did. You've heard the stories, the sun never set on the British Empire. we've experienced what is English common law here. Our law is based on it. Our morals are based on it. Our societies are based on it. But is it right? No. Both chiefs have talked about blood quantums in one way or another. And we hear it all the time. How much of an Indian are you? Oh, I'm 25%. Oh, is that your left leg or your right arm? Which part of you is Indian and which part of you is white and which? It's incomprehensible. My grandfather would roll over in his grave if he knew we were carrying Indian cards. And yet to prove you're a Native American, you have to have a card. I don't believe any Asian students have to carry a card saying from what part of Asia you're from, or of Latin descent or African American descent. But in this country, Native Americans have to carry a card. Why do you have to carry a card? Because you have to prove that you're entitled to be on the land that was taken from you. The last time that was seen was World War II, and you normally wore something on your lapel to indicate whether you were Jewish or not. But to this day in this country, to be recognized officially by the U.S. government as a true Native American, you must carry a card. They've gone as far as to impose blood quantums on other tribes. What is a blood quantum? It is a mechanism that was designed to breed us out of existence. It says that if, let's say, the going rate is 25% or 50%, seems to be where most tribes land. You have to at least have 25% native blood. So what happens is, let's say that Chester is my first cousin. He's 26% native blood. But unfortunately, Laura is my second cousin, and she's 24%. She's not native. I still have the same aunt. I still have the same uncle. How is my second cousin not related to me? Because somebody decided she doesn't have enough of the right blood to be native. Our tribe, which has remained sovereign, and that's a whole discourse by itself. Sovereign can be established through common law or can be established through recognition through the Bureau of Interrogations, or I'm sorry, BIA. Sorry, that was really bad. I know God will smite me for that. We refused. See, one of the things you have to do to be recognized by the BIA, or the Department of the Interior, or Bureau of Indian Affairs, is to submit yourself to blood quantums. So that would require me as chief to say, you're in, oh, you're out, I like you, you're in. How do you go through your family? And that's what a tribe is. It's an extended family. How do you go through your family and determine who is related to you and who's not? You've grown up with these people, but yet that's what is required of us by the federal government. And why is that? It is simply because, as Chief Van Dunk pointed out, they have something that's ours, and they need us to go away. In the state of New Jersey, believe it or not, there are more than 40,000 Native Americans from various tribes, just in the state of New Jersey. Most people don't even know that Indians exist on the eastern seaboard once you get outside of the Mohegan Sun Casino. It's true. But they're alive. And it is a tremendous fight to keep the culture together. They have a tendency, I think the joke is amongst most Native American nations, is out of the 1,000 treaties that the U.S. has made with the Indians, 999 have been broken, and they're trying to figure a way to get out of the last one. What some people think is a glorious place they call reservations, Chief Ross grew up on one, we refer to them as concentration camps, because that's where you were deported to. And that's why my grandfather would not carry a card. Because if you were caught with that card in your pocket, you were picked up and you were moved to Oklahoma. And if you did not take your sand wedge with you, there was nothing to do out there. Because you don't have any golf out there in the sandbox. You sit there, dirt floors, life expectancy for a Native American on a reservation, a male, is somewhere between 52 and 55. Now last night, Deborah spoke, and she said on her reservation, Pine Ridge, the actual life expectancy is 48 for an adult male. Diabetes, malnutrition, alcoholism, drug addiction. Your culture's been taken. You sit on a dirt floor and you wait for a handout. That is not appropriate. Reservations look worse than most third world countries. And yet this is the richest country in the world. 80% of the world's food supply comes from the indigenous people of this continent. Everything that you enjoy, corn, pumpkin, tomato, it's ours. We shared it. And yet our brothers live on reservations. We weren't even citizens in the United States until 1924. Try that one. They arrived here in 16 whatever. 1924, they went, all right, still here. We didn't kill them all off. We're going to probably go to war again. We need some more people. All right, you're citizens. They didn't even ask us. We didn't ask for it. They just decided one day, okay, we're going to make you a citizen. 1975, they said, I think we're going to let them practice their own religion. That seems pretty nifty in a country founded on freedom of religion. They're all savages anyways. Let them dance in a circle or something. But think about it, 1975, you guys were probably, if not alive, on the way, maybe a glimmer in your parents' eyes, shortly. Can you imagine? Well, maybe not you. Probably 1990 something, depending on which driver's license you're carrying Friday night. But real 93, is that the going number? Okay. Okay. We'll get you a new license afterwards. I'll kick in. Realistically, though, can you imagine in the United States granting somebody freedom of religion after how many hundreds of years? 1975. That's ridiculous. And why? Because the U.S. wanted the Olympics here. They could not get the Olympics inside the United States in the 70s. Europe said, not the U.S. volunteered. Europe went, well, yeah, you guys are running around blowing up people and stuff. Might want to do something about those people that are still alive. At least let them practice religion. So, all right, they hurried up, they passed the Religious Freedom Act, and boom, the Olympics came to the U.S. That's why. Nobody had a conscience at that time. We talked earlier about the fact that there were, by some estimates, 56 million natives in this country. And now we're back up to almost 7. Oh, side point, of that 7 million, almost 1 million are full blood. The other 6 million are products of intermarrying who've been able to keep their traditions alive. So 56 million full bloods existed at one point in time, and we've got back up to 1 million now. That seems to eclipse the Holocaust, at least by my math. Probably old school math. I still have my graphing calculator and stuff, but the numbers are pretty good. So the question is, in light of all of those things, how do we move to the future? Because the past is just for us to look at so that we know where we're going. It's kind of like the runway for a plane to land. You just got the lights. Okay, we're going to need to get right in there and then move forward. Well, from my perspective, the road is pretty clear. But it's the national political will that's really the question. It's not a matter of can you do it, it's a matter of is it expedient? Considerations on things such as, are we going to make money on this? How is this going to affect my quarterly statement? What are the shareholders going to say? Can I win the next election if I do the right thing? Since when are morals expediently dismissed? That's the road that everybody got into in World War II. Nobody stopped Hitler's expansion. Well, we'll just look the other way. They sent a bunch of people of Jewish descent to the United States on a fabulous cruise liner, and the U.S. went, whoa, now you just make them go away. When are morals expendable in behalf of what is correct? The answer is never. So the first thing we need to think about, and I wrote down 9 points that came to me, that way I would limit myself and not just run on all evening. But the first point that came to me was we needed to reintegrate indigenous peoples back into mainstream USA. What does that mean? That means that we need to recognize their commonality and their unique insights. There's a reason why the world exists today and is very well fed. It's because we knew how to run our tribes. We knew how to run a country. You never took more than you needed. You always gave back. You gave thanks for what you used. We knew the seasons. We didn't have fracking problems. It's inconceivable. We did not have any of those things. Native Americans, indigenous peoples, need to be reintegrated. They do not need to be marginalized. We need to capitalize on their unique insights so that this country can grow and move forward. The second thing we need to do is reintegrate the natives back into their original roles as caretakers of the environment. Why are we in this mess? Oh. Thank you. It seems like an easy solution. Deborah spoke about last night how she was shocked when she went to the EPA and found out their sole function was to help uranium companies fill out the paperwork correctly. Okay, we got a problem. We need less bureaucracy, and we need the insights of the people who were originally here thriving. Reintegrate them into their roles as caretakers of the environment, reintroduce their way of using everything based on sustainability, not profitability. When you take the money motive out, you do it right the first time. Third, move natives out of this ridiculous system of being wards of the court, which is what they have. Now you think of nations, you look at, we'll say the Pequots or the Mohegans because they're close by and they're easy to look at. They've got money and big houses and casinos and stuff. But do you realize that the Department of the Interior, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, takes their money, puts it in a trust, and if they don't lose it, which there's a lot of cases out there for missing billions, if they don't lose it, if the tribe wants to do something, they have to petition the Department of the Interior and say, we've got a great project, we'd like to build a dam. The Department of the Interior says, well, we'll get back to you in a couple years after we think about it. Well, we've got the money in the bank. That's nice. We'll let you know. So tribes are given land, tribes are given money. The government then takes it back and puts it in the trust. And they tell the tribes whether or not they can use it, what they can use it on, and they get their blessing. If they don't get their blessing, then you go back to the drawing board. But ultimately, even though it's given, it's the yo-yo effect. Just take it right back. So the tribes are really not autonomous. They are still, as always, under the guise and the direction of the federal government. Why is that? The same reason that we weren't citizens till 1924. The government views Native Americans as being savages. We don't know how to write, we have no civilization because we did not come from England. We had a thriving civilization of 56 million people here. We barely had any war. Everybody was fed. You moved when the seasons moved, and yet we're the uncivilized ones. That is why the Indians have to be taken out from underneath this ward of the court status. We are capable of effectively sorting wheat from chaff. I have a very small tribe by most comparisons, and yet 10% of my tribe has at least a doctorate. I have a doctorate. My dad has a doctorate. The chief before him has a PhD. We've got attorneys. We are capable of signing our names. We can call Edward Jones too if we need them. We can buy a car. Let us thrive as human beings. Fourth, the government needs to respect our ability to self-rule with negotiated boundaries. Now, we're not talking about succession. We're not talking about countries or anything of that stuff. What we're saying is we get a plot of land and we can decide where to irrigate it. We can pick a bank. We can have a tribal police force, those type of things. We're not talking about standing militaries or anything. We're talking about coexistence. Because the reality is, with 7 million natives, if everybody in the country went home and just left the natives, we don't have enough people to run a state. We'd just be taken over anyways. We need to coexist with everybody. That's reality. It can't be done to run the country on our own. Everybody's here, and I have a lot of relatives, and we talk about the old timers. And probably one of the greatest things that caused problems for our people was the approach. And we'd sat back and they'd go, well, the Dutch came and went, and the French came and went. Well, the English came and went too. These Americans are still here. They're not going anywhere. After a couple hundred years, they're not going anywhere. So we need to integrate, but we need to have the ability to self-rule within designated lands. Fifth, we need to repatriate. What do we mean by repatriate? That means, and this is especially important with East Coast tribes, as first contact tribes, we saw the English when they came in, the Dutch, and we dealt with them, sovereign to sovereign. After the United States became a country, they went, yeah, that's not going to work, we want the land. That's how the Cherokees ended up in New Jersey. They went, we need more slaves. You guys aren't really white, we'll take you. So the Cherokees went, and they came up to New Jersey, and then Andrew Jackson found them, and they took the Cherokee and the Delaware and went, Oklahoma. Bring them home. Why in the world would somebody whose ancestors are born and their bones are here, why would they live in Oklahoma? It's not a choice. How would you like it if your family was picked up tomorrow and taken to Nigeria? I mean, it's the same difference. You're just gone. You don't know anything, and you just kind of sit there going, wow, this sucks. Let them come home. They're not a threat anymore. The war's over. It's been over for a couple hundred years. Bring them home. Let them be repatriated. Come back where their ancestors are. Now, for our part, sixth, as Native Americans, as Indigenous people, we need to recognize that families who've been here for 100, 200, 300 years, they're Native Americans. Okay? They might not be Indigenous, but somewhere when you pass the centurion mark, it's kind of obvious that you're here. So if we adjust our perspective and go, okay, well, they're here, let's work with them, let's make something happen, then everybody will get along. Also, all of the displaced bands and tribes, we need to kind of start bringing the tribes back together. If you've taken a look at world history, and I assume that you all have at this point, you've seen that since prior to World War I, the world has subdivided. I don't know, it's like 250, 260 countries now, when back there and there used to be 60. We need to kind of roll back and re-merge. And the reason you have this fracturing amongst Native Americans is because, like our tribe, when they took the main body of Delawares, we hid. If you were light-skinned, you hid in this neighborhood. If you were dark-skinned, you hid in that neighborhood, and you went, I'm not leaving. We are not going. It's time for families to be remerged and brought back here. Seventh, we need to establish Native American representation in Congress. Stop being scared of us. It's okay. If we lose the vote, which we probably will most of the time, at least we had a vote. Get a couple congressmen. Yeah, we don't like that. We really don't want to level that mountain. And we don't want to go over there and nuke that country either. Okay, great, you had your vote. We're going to do it anyways. It's not intimidating. It's not threatening. We should have a vote. We were here. We should not be imprisoned and put in concentration camps, but we should be reintegrated into society with a say. It's our right. Ninth, we need to open a constructive dialogue. For at least 100 years, this country has been scared of talking to the Native Americans. And they're scared. I'd be scared too if I stole all the land. I mean, honestly, none of it was theirs. You can take a look at sovereign immunity. You can take a look at doctrine of discovery, anything you want. But it's wrong. It was a rule created by a bully to protect the fact that he was a bully. Can you imagine if you were the toughest guy in the lunchroom, and most of us had somebody try and take your lunch money. If you were the toughest guy in the lunchroom, and you beat somebody up and took their lunch money, and you got the principal to agree to write a rule that said you're never wrong, you could never go to the principal. That's what these countries have done. They just simply set it up so that you can never play against them. And last but not least, we need to end the welfare system, which I refer to as the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Let us stand tall again. Give us a bite of the apple. Just one bite. My God, we give $500 million to a company that goes out of business the next day. You give billions of dollars to countries that are cease to exist in a month. You spend $1 billion on studying the sexual reproduction characteristics of a spider, but you won't give us a bite of the apple? We don't want a constant nibble. It's demeaning. We want a bite of the apple, we want to stand tall, and we want to be proud for all eternity. However, it'll take men of courage, men of vision, and probably most importantly, reasonable men that can sit down and talk. This country still has such people. And by doing such, this country can once again lead the world in doing what is right and what is just. But it's not going to happen unless the next generation coming up decides that they want to do something. In this 21st century, the time is now, and I'm really going to plagiarize, and the professors don't listen, but carpe diem. Seize the day now. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Get up, do something. I'd like to thank you. I'm going to ask Chief Ross, as soon as he's done with his very important phone call, to, yeah, I had to take that shot, sorry, man, to do a traditional closing prayer. He's probably getting inspiration right now. It's being downloaded. I'm going to pay for that one later. But if you would do a traditional closing prayer for us, we would be honored, my brother. If you come over here. We've known each other a long time. He's really going to get me.
Okay, I'm going to do this closing prayer. Normally in ceremony, the Kintawa way, or Kitawaji way, would be that we would stand and face east. But being that we're indoors and not in our natural space outside, I will refrain from that. But just listen intently and pray along silently with me. There are words here that are in Jalagi. For those who don't know, that's Cherokee in our language. We call ourselves Jalagi. Okay? Cherokee is another word that comes from another tribe. I believe it was Choctaw, because they didn't know who we were over there. So they asked us, well, who lives over there? And they said Cherokee. Actually, it's Cherokee or Cherokee. But we call ourselves Ani Jalagi or Ani Yahuiga, principal people. Okay, now for the closing prayer. Oji Doda, O Great One, Creator of all things. Wadora Nishi, thank you for this evening's breath, all creation and all our relations. We give great thanks for our earth, our mother. We pray and ask for your healing power for her, our hearts, our minds and spirits. so that we may, in peace, harmony with her in all our relations. We pray and ask for clarity of your vision and your guidance for our steps on the path of good medicine and truth. We pray and ask for your blessings and grace of all red clay nations, United Nations, and United States and their leadership. We give great thanks for all blessings, past and present, seen and unseen, knowing that they will lead and leave us in a good way. We give great thanks for the sacred gifts of prayer and the universal Holy Spirit with all their power. O Great One, we pray and ask for the safe journey home for everyone here and elsewhere. We say, Wadowa Nichio Jidoda. Thank you, O Great One. We are grateful. Many blessings to you all this evening. Pray well, walk well in peace, harmony, and balance with our Mother Earth and all our relations. Wadowa Nishi, thank you. Naji deste, naskwa one, tula nuni he. Go with God. Thank you.
Now, if anybody has any questions for any of the chiefs, we'd be more than happy to answer them if we can without getting ourselves in trouble. I know that we don't. I don't know if any of you have those groups. But that's why we're here, is because this is kind of a unique forum that the school has put together. It's a first of its kind. I mean, it's rare to get 3 chiefs to do anything in public, let alone agree. So that was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
So now, I would look for future things from the school, and if anything does get started up, we'll run it through Dr. Murphy so that she can. Oh, there's a mic over here. Does anybody else have a question? Even a scratch, we'll answer. We'll call on you. So, if all right, go ahead.
I wanted to say that there is a radio station, AWI, where there is a show with us for an hour. I think it's on Wednesdays around 10 a.m.
Thursday.
where they talk.
Isn't that Miyokusin's?
Yeah, it's
Miyokusin's?
Thursday at 10.
Yeah. That's Miyokusin's station, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of.
And then
Okay.
5:45 a.m.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, we have a question. I saw you scratching your nose back there. You almost got called on.
He knew what you were supposed to do.
How the tribes can hopefully kind of get together and form a large body so that they could have some more political influence. I mean, since there's all these different tribes, it seems to me that there could use some kind of a national forum where they could come together as a group, at least, like the UN is doing, kind of like with the indigenous peoples thing, and that way they can at least advance their issues and maybe get some political force going, put forth some candidates, put forth some environmental issues that are also quite often Native American issues in many parts of the country. I know in the Northwest, they're doing a lot with the salmon runs. The natives are trying to get a lot of the dams removed so that the fish can return to the spawning grounds and different things like that. Can you think of a way where Native Americans could, get together in that kind of a way? And my second part of my question was, are there any countries that...
1 second. You have to
Oh,
hold that
sorry.
first half because
Okay.
we're a little slow up here. That was a big first half. I want to make sure. No, don't go away. I just want to make sure that if you guys want to take a shot at that.
Isn't it the Native American Congress?
Yes.
Yeah. There's that organization,
Oh, there is one.
but they practice colonial law.
Well, one of the biggest problems that has to be overcome is in the colonization or the assimilation phase, one of the things that they did is they were very capable at splitting tribes. And what you have is a fractured system where if more tribes come together, they pose a threat to existing tribes because they don't increase the funding. So what you have is a situation where you have what I will, pardon my crudeness, I call it dogs fighting under the table for scraps from the master. So they keep the native indigenous people down here, and every now and then whoever's sitting at the table drops a bone, and all of the tribes fight. Once, if they would get over that assimilation and that European thinking and realize their commonality, then organizations as the Congress, which Chief Van Dunk was talking about, would work more effectively. But unfortunately, they've done a very good job at being divisive, if that answers the first half. And you had a follow-up. See, I watch the news. I watch C-SPAN. There's always a follow-up question. Go ahead.
I was wondering, I noticed a movement that kind of promoted schools for Native Americans to relearn the languages and kind of be immersed in their culture. Is that anything that you've seen among the generations coming up today about wanting to be reintroduced to their culture a little more strongly, perhaps?
Well, I personally know that it varies from tribe to tribe and what they're trying to do to reinstate their cultures and influence their young bloods. There are programs out there that are self-generated amongst the tribe, and it coincides with what your first question was. It has to do with turning over the old guard, if you will, to the young bloods who are now moving up, okay? Because our elders have been conditioned, all right, and assimilated in such a way to think, to what Brother Yanagushka was talking about, taking scraps, okay, and the young bloods who are now getting more educated are seeing a new way or a new perspective to open up tribal councils to the very ideas you're talking about. With my tribe, half of us speak the language, half of us know. And I just now will be starting a program come spring and reinstituting the language for those who are willing to learn it. All right. And with that comes a reculturalization, philosophically and otherwise, to be repatriated into tradition. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you know what I'm
definitely.
saying? But, there's a lot of other chiefs out there that I'm in contact with throughout the United States, Cherokee, Chickamauga, and others, who are coming together, all right, in solidarity, all right, who are trying to get that movement forward, who have totally different new thinking, a new nucleus, kind of like a think tank, if you will, about how to address those issues.
All right,
good.
Thank you very much. Any other questions before all right, right here with the nice choker. And if you don't need that, I'll take it home with me. Might even wear it too.
My question was more directed towards Chief Van Dunk, and it just kind of surprised me that you were actually banned from the Ramapo land. I was just wondering what the purpose of it, what actually drove them into banning you from the land.
Well, first of all, you have to realize I'm a pain in the ass. With knowledge. So I became a political liability to the next chief, and the only way for him to, in theory, silence me was to, well, actually he did two things. He wanted to silence me, and he wanted to make sure that no one else stepped up, spoke their mind. So what his little piece of colonial love did, in theory, made everyone else say, well, I don't want to get kicked out of the tribe, so we're not going to do what Anthony did. And all Anthony did was learn traditions, learn the language, and support his people like nobody's business. But for me, I did what I thought was right, and I accept any type of punishment that they can throw at me. There's nothing wrong with doing what's in your heart, nothing at all. You just have to be able to accept whatever happens afterwards.
Also, if anyone have any questions, please come up to the mic to ask them so it can be properly recorded.
Sometimes, if you notice history, those that are on the forefront of thought and change have a tendency to be censored. It's only later with 2020 hindsight that you find out that they were correct and actually leaders. I've known this man a long time, and I'd go anywhere with him. I'd be proud to have him by my side, and that's all I'm going to say on that. One last question before Dr. Murphy grabs that giant hook and pulls me off the stage. Last chance. In the green?
Yeah, I'm not going to go to the mic, but
Okay.
how do you feel as Indigenous people about things like you mentioned 1,000 trees and 999 of them being broken, and then like on the dollar coin we have two hands, and it's mentions a treaty, and then on the other dollar coin we have Sacagawea, and we have movies like Pocahontas. And how do you feel about representation of these when they can be slightly misleading?
Would you like to tell her about that female on the one side of the coin, Chief Ross?
Use that line too.
We're talking about Sacagawea, right?
Yes. Welcome back.
Okay. That's Lewis and Clark. 18, whatever. Well, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, you know, it's misleading. It's a misrepresentation. It depends who you talk to in regards to her. In my tribe, I actually have a member who's a descendant of Sacagawea, of her child that she was carrying on her back. And he's an elder. He happens to be of Cherokee, Cherokee and Mohawk, and Rappahannock descent. Like I said, it depends who you talk to. You know, other people might say, you know, she's a traitor or whatever because she led, you know, Lewis and Clark here or there or whatever. But she was a captured woman, and she, in order to survive, you know, she did what she had to do. When you're put in that kind of a situation, I can only imagine either you capitulate or, you know, at that time, you know, killing Indians was, you know, nothing.
Good sport.
It was something to do, you know. So she found her worth, and she knew the land, and she guided them. I don't fault her for doing that, because if I was in that situation, I probably would have capitulated too. I don't know, I got too much mouth. They probably would have killed me.
Early on.
But there's many things like that, you know, throughout our history, and, you know, our perspective is quite differently and told differently than what you normally learn in the books. You know, history is his history. It's not our history. You know, we look at things that from a totally different perspective,
Yeah.
because we were on the receiving end. And, you know, the victors go to spoils. We were conquered, so we didn't write the books. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's a whole different kind of perspective. That's why I said I would love to sit down and talk to you about things from a native perspective, as opposed to, you know, the colonial perspective, you know, because it's quite different. It's quite different. And the disenfranchisement everybody is a different. When I say disenfranchisement, it's like, okay, here's an example. A brother over there, all right? Christmas addicts, right? Was supposed to be the first slave that fell in a revolution up there in Maine and Boston, right? Okay, he was the first freeman, all right? Well, the reality is, from our perspective, okay, his name was Atux. He was a Puspatuk. His father was a slave who ran away, who married a Puspatuk woman. Okay? So in our eyes, he was native, he was a skin. You feel me? All right? But the history books say what? Okay. I rest my case.
So that's the coin.
That goes back to the point of what brother over here was talking about, percentages. All right? His mother was a full-blood. You see what I'm saying? His father was an African slave. But we chose not, but they chose not to put it that way. You know?
So on one side of the coin, you have hands shaking over broken treaties, and on the other side, you have a relative of ours that was actually a captured individual forced into involuntary servitude. When I was growing up, I learned that the first Thanksgiving was not turkey. I mean, we had lobster, the things that are native to here, but also that, pardon my bluntness, but that the women and children were rounded up, put into a church. The church was set on fire, and then they were shot when they tried to climb out the windows, and then they sat down and gave thanks that the natives, the savages, were gone. It's perspective. But sometimes you got to put it behind you and move on, which is what we're attempting to do. And with that, I'm getting the eye. We shall have Dr. Murphy come up here because I've taken a lot of your time. Thank you so very much for coming. If you would, another round of applause for our guests.
This has been a phenomenal evening. I'm sure you all have enjoyed it as much as I have. We've learned a lot this evening, and I hope you've taken notes and that seeds have been planted that are going to sprout. Fairleigh Dickinson University is in the business of producing and preparing global citizens. That is an integral part of our mission as an educational institution. You have learned here tonight one of the basic principles of being a successful and an effective global citizen, and that is the law of one. Think about it. The chiefs have shared with us the basic understanding of what the law of one means, and it means oneness with everything that exists. So as a global citizen, you can go anywhere in the world knowing that the people that you're meeting and working with are your family. You're not thinking about war. You're not thinking about conquering them. You're not thinking about using them for your own interest. But as a global citizen, you're thinking about how can we work together to make this a better world. The law of one has many dimensions of meaning and understanding. And I have learned in my experience with indigenous peoples in Africa, in Europe, in Latin America, they all speak in the same way. It's multidimensional. The law of one can mean a million things. And it's a life journey to understand that. So we are pushing you along, assisting you along by creating programs like this, by giving you the opportunity to meet extraordinary people, like the chiefs who are here tonight, like Deborah White Plume, who was here last night. This is the opportunity to expand your understanding and give you skills that are complementary to what you learn in our classrooms, so that once you leave Fairleigh Dickinson University, you hit the ground running as a global citizen, and you're able to function effectively in a global corporation where you have colleagues who are from places all over the world, in a school where your students may have many different hues. Wherever you may go, you will be able to function because you have been exposed to the understanding and the skills that are required to be a global citizen.